Welcome to From Idea to Finished Product, or how to get a product idea made without getting screwed. This is module 5 of this series and the final module, and we think we've got something good here. So we're excited about this, and I'm joined here today by Sambo. Hey, Sambo.
What's going on, Robo?
That's good, man. It's good. This is an exciting piece of the puzzle. This is, we've had a lot of material up till now, and this final aspect is really the meat and potatoes of the entire thing. And it's really where, all of the material we gave you before is a lot of preparation and it seems like a lot of work. It is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, yeah.
But those knowing those things going through this entire process, and you're finally here where we are ready to make the thing. It will really help put everything in context, and you're much more prepared to go through the making aspect. And it's, we're going to discuss this, but a lot of times it's mostly where a lot of people just jump right to this.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you're coming up with ideas, you're getting excited, and the next thing most people think about is, let's make it.
Yeah.
Let's get this done.
Right. So, and that's fine. I mean, that has worked. The preliminary information that you have up until now, hopefully that creates a platform for inventors. So by the time you get into the making stage, your confidence is up, you've got your shit together, and you can do this well. You have a better chance of pulling this off, because this is the part where it gets really hard. Mm-hmm. This is very hard. So the topics we're going to cover is the product development process, sort of essentially that there is a process, and we're going to show you some common problems of why a lot of people fail in this endeavor. We're going to go through the 6 steps of product development, and they're high level points to the product development. It's the most important part of this or any product, is knowing the product development process. The process changes a little bit depending on who you're working with. There are some experts who have different processes, more simple, some are more complex. This is our process. This is the one that we have put together based off of our work in launching our products, as well as other experts that we work with, friends and colleagues of ours, and us sharing together the interviews that we've done with them. We've used that to compile a process, and we've refined that process and worked that process. We're going to go over that today into some detail. We're going to discuss the development team. We gave you just a real quick overview of who those people were earlier. Now we're going to show how they are actually used and when you should bring them in and when you should engage with them. We're also going to show you how to develop a scope of work, which is a very important document in this process for communicating what your idea is. We're going to show you some ideas on proposals and pricing. At the end of the day, you have to know what your costs are going to be, and you need to know what your pricing structure is going to be. I was getting dry, Sam. And then we're going to wrap it up. This is basically the wrap up of the entire series of modules, and we'll discuss what's next. There's what happens when you're at the end of this. Hopefully you're able to make some big decisions by going through this. Our number one goal for this entire program in the first place was to help inventors make better decisions. And if they're going to go through this process, no matter who they use, how do they avoid getting screwed? How do they avoid making the mistakes? So all of this information is for that. But what happens now that you get to the end of this and you decide to either go forward and move on and chase your dreams, or maybe not. Maybe you just pack it up and keep your day job.
Or you just decide that going through this process and going through this course is that, hey, this idea may not be the one for me to work on, but it'll create the framework for deciding what their next idea is.
Right. And we're gonna give you some. We've got some other things that we have developed and are developing to help you go from this into the next stages, to either learn more, get deeper involved, and be able to take your product and sell it in the marketplace. So we'll go through a lot of that stuff. But before, as always, because we don't want people to get screwed, we got to send out the warning. So we always say, remove your ignorance, know what's going to happen, go in with your eyes wide open. It's the best way to not get screwed in this process. So the process takes time, and this is a common problem during product development, is that most people don't realize just how long it takes. In their mind, they think that they can start the process and have a product ready in 3 or 4 months. And that's just typically, if you're inventing anything new, it's new for everyone involved, even experts in that particular niche, in that field, with those materials. If it's a new invention, it's their first time. So there's the process of going through is, I typically, when I'm asked how long does this take, it's at least a year. If you're lucky, you'll get it in within the year. But I gave the warning that it takes time. I like to fudge deadlines, the expectations. Whenever I'm told something's going to be 2 weeks, I write down 3 or 4. If it's 8, I know it's going to be 10 or 12.
It's kind of like your rule of thumb. Is it kind of like twice as long as someone tells you?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, it depends on once I get into the working mode with the different people involved, the team, I get an understanding of how close to expectations they set. Some of them fudge. Some of them give me deadline expectations with just wanting to please me, wanting to keep me excited, and after a while they miss 7 or 8. I know, man, I've really got to push these out. You'll get a flow for how to fudge it, but I fudge everyone going in. And when we get to that working flow, sometimes I can say, okay, these guys are pretty accurate on a lot of these things. I don't have to do so much. But fudging really helps me keep everybody's expectations in line, and you have a lot fewer pissed off people. So the phases will overlap. So we give this in a very linear type, presentation. It's just the best way for us to be able to show how this works, but you have to know that some things are going to get started while other things aren't even finished yet. So there is a lot of overlap, not only in the different phases, but the different team members involved. You got to bring some people in early on that you won't really engage with till later, but they do overlap in both of those. So you need to know that so that you can keep this moving along properly. And another warning is that bad vendors feed on ignorance. I mean, that's, we talk about the sharks in the water, and some of them, there are unethical vendors out there. You have to know that going in. Some of them aren't unethical. They either expect you to know, which you don't, or they miscommunicate. But bad vendors, they feed on the ignorance that's out there. They aren't really taking advantage of anything other than the fact that you don't know. And since you don't know, they still want your money. And
well, they're also taking advantage of your excitement. You're wanting to do something new.
Right.
And wanting to jump right in. So, like you said.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I'm not sitting here saying that half of the vendors are bad. That's not the case. There are a few out there, but the thing is that they, if you're educated enough about all of these things, you're removing that ignorance veil so that you'll recognize when somebody's trying to foof you, so to speak. And you do that by, asking questions. Ask questions. I said it several times throughout different modules. Don't be afraid to be dumb. Don't be afraid to act dumb. They're just, when you run into anything from big stuff, like how does this process all work, to little things like clarify what they're trying to tell you. Vernacular is a big one. They'll use terms. There are terms used in the industry that are common terms, but not to people who've never been in the industry. Plus, the vernacular changes from one firm to another. They all kind of have their own, what they call things. So that you really need to ask a lot of questions so that you go in there and knowing what's going to happen. Clarify expectations and outcomes. This is really typically glazed over. They hold people's feet to the fire when they're kicking out deadlines or rough estimates, or when will things be delivered, what kind of a prototype am I going to be looking at next time. You really want to clarify what your expectations are. Be very clear on what they're going to deliver, what you're going to receive. It's controlled by you. And you also want to know what is the deliverable, what's the outcome, what can I expect from that. Don't get pushed around. This too happens when you don't know, when your first time you're going in, and you'll end up getting bullied. And it happens to everybody. It happens to even experienced people. You want to be nice. You want to, you're giving them the benefit of the doubt because they're the expert here. But don't get pushed around. Don't let them dictate things that either aren't correct or that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah, and this also reminds me of the story you're telling about Jerry and how he was getting this stuff through the manufacturer, and all of a sudden he had a problem because they were holding his molds.
Yes.
Renderings hostage.
Yes. They held him hostage, and that's a great example of getting pushed around. Yeah. Jerry. That was a very costly process. In fact, I don't think he ever really got them. I think he had to reproduce them. So, and all this is because we're just trying to minimize your risk. You go in, if you know that there's going to be these things out there, we just want to minimize your risks. You do that by, educating yourself and acting, like we said, accordingly. So the product development process is the most fun part of inventing. It really is fun. It's amazing to see something go from a sketch to the first renderings, and see that come to life, and then you go into the prototyping and you're holding it in your hands and you're fiddling with it and you're improving it, and then you go through the manufacturing process and you're making your orders. It's really a fun process, but it's also the most frustrating at the same time.
It's kind of like parenting.
It's a lot like parenting. It is. You're basically raising your baby, so it is exactly like parenting. That's actually good. So common problems. Most of the time, what happens is that new inventors just skip the steps. And I've seen some inventors skip the steps and it work out fine. They lucked out and got a good manufacturer. But when I say skipping the steps, they take their sketch and they find a manufacturer that can make it. They send them the sketch and they're asking for a prototype and they want to know the pricing. It seems obvious. I did it myself. I found a manufacturer that worked in the materials I was looking for. I contacted them. I said, here's what I want to make. I need a couple made that I can demonstrate, and how much will it cost? How much will it cost to make them? Well, you've just skipped a whole bunch of steps that are required in this to do it correctly. And believe it or not, there are manufacturers that will give you a prototype and pricing. And we were talking about earlier, Beam Money, he's fully integrated from the design aspect, the engineering, all that, all the way down through manufacturing. And so he has manufacturing capabilities. And he says that each week, between 1 and a dozen people will come to him with a sketch, and they want a prototype and they want pricing. So then he has to back them up and educate them on, this is the way the process really works. You need to start here, then go here, then go here. And he says, I lose a lot of people that way because they have a manufacturer that says that they will do it. And what happens is that you are not getting what you really want. Your pricing is going to be wrong. Everything's going to be out of joint. It's usually a miserable experience. And he also said that Give it a year, they'll be back.
Yep.
They'll go through that entire process. Roy in Austin, another fully integrated firm I use, he has hundreds of stories of people who've come back around, have had their ass handed to them, have lost a bunch of money, and are now ready to do it the correct way. So if by skipping these processes, you're really hanging your ass out there. Another common problem is miscommunication and false expectations. Miscommunication is not a malicious act. Miscommunication is where I just didn't completely understand what you're telling me, and it happens constantly. And it's a problem. I still do it. I still think I understand, and we keep moving forward. And I found out I didn't understand. I didn't understand what I was going to be given. They didn't understand what I was asking for. It's even the smallest. Everything in the product development world has ripple effects. So even the smallest miscommunicated step can ripple throughout. A project we had 2 years ago, the smallest little thing, which was the size of the unit. The size of the unit needed to be 24 inches by 15 inches, but it was miscommunicated. So everybody was working on a 27 by 16 inch aspect, and it wasn't unearthed until in the engineering, because most of the people involved in building it out, there weren't that piece of information that was miscommunicated early on trickled down, and it was hidden until way down in almost to the prototyping stage. So just before prototyping, it got caught. It would have been a very costly little mistake. It's actually a big mistake. Getting the size wrong is a big mistake, but it fell through the cracks so easily. And even on the bill of materials and the engineering drawings, unless someone, we didn't sit down and go, oh, that size is wrong on this particular area, because those things are so detailed that you sometimes miss those things. So miscommunication can have a ripple effect. All these things can have a ripple effect that really costs you later on. False expectations can be a malicious act. Like I mentioned earlier, the deadlines and fudging the deadlines. They're not trying to be malicious per se, but sometimes they are. Sometimes they're going to tell you it's going to be 8 weeks, and then it ends up being 16, 18 weeks, and you missed other deadlines because of that. We've had those problems where we were told we were going to have a delivery in September. And so we created an entire marketing plan based around that assumption, and we did a pre-launch. And when that September came, we didn't have anything. The next month, and blew an entire program, an entire launch, because we were given a false expectation. So false expectations are harder to overcome. I mean, it's having a lie detector is kind of impossible. But you can really, if you fudge deadlines, if you really, really ask the questions and continue to stay on top of it. And also we're going to talk later on about the communication process, and a lot of the reasons why you get false expectations is because you weren't updating as you went. So, and these things cause missed deadlines. Like I said, they cause scope creep. So scope creep is essentially where the original scope of work is where I make my description and you promise certain deliverables, and scope creep usually happens from the inventor onto the vendors, where they ask for little tweaks here, little tweaks there, a little of this, little of that. Pretty soon, what I had been promised to be delivered for a certain price, I'm clear up out of that. I've added 8 or 9 line items on there, and the scope creep will typically be called out by the vendor. They'll usually say, hey, that's not what we agreed on. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes, I'll let that one slide. And pretty soon they're mad. Yeah. They're angry because you're doing scope creep. they didn't want to, you're a client, they didn't want to call it out and say, hey, we can't do that unless you pay us more. But eventually they'll have animosity toward the project, happens more than you would even know. And also budget creep. Those are tied together. When you do scope creep, a lot of time your budget falls out of whack. So when you've created this assumption of what your budget's going to be, and the miscommunication along the way combined with false expectations, next thing you know, your budget isn't $100,000, it's $250,000, and you're screwed.
Well, that kind of brings up an example that we were talking about the other day, Robo, with the Limbit, right?
Limbit, yeah. So Limbit was, in fact, let's go through these, and I'll use Limbit for all of this because it kind of encompasses a lot of these. Another one is rushing the process. You are really wanting this product, it's taking longer than you want, and you try to rush it, or even your vendor might try to rush it. They're trying to get it out the door as fast as they can. So if you rush the process, you're going to be subject to mistakes and poor quality. It's going to come out the other side, but it's not going to be what you're looking for. We worked with a young lady who we didn't actually engage with her, but she came to us to present it was a plastic apparatus for accessories for weddings and little girls' clothing and things like that. And she had all kinds of horror stories. We spent 2.5 hours on the phone with her, mostly listening to her getting her ass kicked for 2.5 years. Bad vendors is mostly the problem on her part. But the product itself, by the time she was wanting to get it made and had all these other problems, she teamed up with a company who just really wanted to get it out the door quickly so they could test it, and the product didn't work. They got 10,000 units made in boxes, in packaging, ready to go on national TV, on a cable network, and they didn't work. They pulled the airing of her segment off the air not an hour before she was supposed to go on because they couldn't make them work. They rushed the process. Higher than expected or hidden costs. These are sort of like miscommunication and false expectations. Your costs are going to change from the first time you start getting pricing all the way through to where you make your initial order. So it changes because the scope of work's going to change. The sizes are going to change. Everything, we said everything has a ripple effect. Your change requests, your revisions, you switch materials, you move sizes, you do all of those different little elements change the costs and along the way. If you're not paying attention to those, all of a sudden you're way outside of budget, or your product is outside of what you're going to be able to sell it. And we talked about our friends who, they did a Kickstarter, selling a product for, I think it was $160, but their end cost of goods was $260. It was outrageously different, and it was a bunch of costs that had not been considered, and they just continue to go up. So higher than expected costs, that's just a killer. Hidden costs are a little different because there are some things that weren't communicated that are going to cost you money. A very common one is the tooling costs. A lot of people don't consider the tooling costs when they're going through and developing their budgets and figuring out, when they come to market, what they're going to need to price their product at. And we talk about you going and skipping those steps. You going and getting a prototype and a price to get them made. You're probably not going to have tooling included in that. They're going to say, here's your prototype that cost you $2,000, and we can make these for $150 a unit. Those are the prices you're getting if you're skipping all these steps. And the hidden costs are going to be when you actually engage and try to go get them made, it's going to be all out of whack. So hidden costs, you need to know the process, and you need to know all the pieces in the process so that by the time you're done, you'll know all of these things that you didn't know about the cost part. And those things added up, basically you run out of money, and nothing kills a project faster than running out of money. And so that brings me to the Limbit project. We didn't necessarily skip processes. Basically, we didn't know there were some phases in the development, and we also miscommunicated. We also had false expectations. Rushing the process, we did not rush the process. About the only one we didn't do. We did have higher than expected, and we also had hidden costs. And it's a product that is an electronic device, electronic units that send information to a smartphone, and the smartphone has software that gathers data from the units, and then that data is then turned into algorithms that are interpreted by another software, which is an interface for users to be able to determine lameness in animals and humans. And so when we engaged and started this process, we thought that the scope of work was for everything all the way up to the interface aspect. And we knew that we were going to engage with a different firm to build out a really nice, pleasing interface. The product development team, that's not their skill set, so we needed to engage with yet another group, another vendor, to help us with that. And so because of our ignorance is where this all started, is that when we scoped it out, we were unclear as to where the software aspect took place, which that there were several different elements, because the hardware, the electronic units themselves had firmware that had to be developed for that. And so that allowed it to pull data from the accelerator and the level and the GPS and send it via Bluetooth and or Wi-Fi to a smartphone. Smartphone had software that could capture that data and turn it into the algorithms that we needed. And then those needed to be handed over to another platform that created an interface on the phone that you would interpret, and consumers could tell what was going on. And then there was others that pulled it up to the cloud, pushed it to the cloud, so the data was stored on the cloud. And there was also another dashboard that could be accessed from any computer. So in the beginning, when we were scoping this out, there were miscommunications about what deliverables were going to come from whom. And so when we got our pricing, we thought we were getting pricing all the way up to the interface level. And then we knew we were going to engage with another company and do interface. The development team thought that they were delivering up to where the firmware pushed it, and the smartphone captured the data, basically just captured and stored the data. And so there was a couple of missing legs in there that were huge, each one of them were very expensive. So we didn't know that cost was going to be included. It took us a year and a quarter of development, going through developing the units themselves, sourcing the parts and pieces, testing the hardware, making sure it was right. It had to have all of these different requirements for the form and the function for that to actually work. And then we started working on transferring the data and building the firmware and transferring that up to the smartphone. And so a year and a quarter later, doing all of these changes and adjustments and moving this along, before it was discovered, guys, we didn't tell you we were going to build these parts. We're like, well, we only have enough money to get through here. If we don't have that, we don't have anything. So that's where it started to tumble, and it eventually paused the project. And because we didn't do when we went through the funding phase, we talked about, getting prepared and doing your pitch deck early on and having it ready and doing your pro forma as you go and making adjustments. We thought we were going to be able to fund the project all the way through to the end. And now we discovered that we didn't only fall short, we fell way short. And we're going to have to go get outside funding. So then we had to clear up, pause the project, develop the pitch deck, develop all the materials, have the investment banker help us put together packages that we could go out and solicit. And we're out soliciting. We still haven't unpaused the project because now we have to find outside capital. And it's going to cost more because, as I mentioned earlier, you and I were just shooting the shit. The thing is that as time goes on, once a project is paused, it scares the hell out of me, because it's not like just a blip and then we get going again. It literally knocks you back instead of just stopping. You really get knocked back. By the time you re-engage with the team, they've moved on and done all kinds of other things. So all those people who are familiar with the project and moving along that pathway, and the momentum that was created and the excitement by everybody, these people, this is their job. They love that excitement. When it got paused, first of all, everybody got the wind knocked out of their sails, even the development team. They're brokenhearted because they want to see this live. They want to give it birth as well. And by the time we get done going through the investment phase, which I predict is going to be minimum 6 to 8 months, finding venture capital and then engaging with them and doing all the due diligence required, it's going to be at least 6 to 8 months that we go back and pull it out of the dustbin. It's going to take time and money for them to review, see where it was, get some new pricing, and get it going again. So the train that was moving got stopped, and we're going to have to.
It takes a lot to get the momentum of the train going.
And it costs more money.
Go back to 100 miles an hour.
I guarantee you our pricing is 20 to 25% higher because of that miscommunication and that pause. We're just going to have to add that on. So those are common problems. The number one common problem is just skipping the steps, going to a manufacturer, trying to get a price for your prototype. I just want a prototype. And like we talked about, it's the excitement that drives you.
I'll get this thing in my hand.
Yeah, let's get going. Son of a bitch. I've been thinking about this forever. Let's go. I got some money. But what we're trying to do, and the reason we have a process, is because our goal isn't just to get a prototype and get pricing and then a product made. Our goal is to have a product that can be reproduced consistently on a mass scale by any knowledgeable professional. You should be able to, once you go through this process, you have deliverables that you can shop around. You can take to other manufacturers. It provides you really good choices, options for choices. And that's what we're really after. It's not that we want to make one. We want to make hundreds or thousands of these things. So you need to follow this certain process so that can be replicable, and it's going to be consistent every time. So let's get right into what the 6 steps of product development are. I'm going to do kind of a quick overview, get them all out there, and then we'll go back and we'll do some detail work. The first one, obviously, in this is it's your role as the inventor. Your idea, your sketches, and your rough mock-up are the first step. You're going to need those to, first of all, you're going to need those to work out a lot of the iterative process before you engage with a professional and get as much homework done as possible so that by the time you do engage, you have done a lot of the dirty work, so to speak. It'll save you money as well. But you alleviate the confusion early on by having done all of your ideation process correctly. So we talked about the idea and the idea creation process. If you follow that method, and by the time you're done, you'll have your ideas, your sketches, and your mock-ups, and you've tested it with your consumer, you've made your revisions, you've got all your notes before you go and you come to the next phase, which is your concept design. So, I've got my rough homemade idea. I've got what I want. This is what's in my head. I'm trying to communicate that as best I can to an industrial designer. And they take that information, much like an architect, we talked about that earlier. They take all that information and they will create a 3D rendering of your idea. And that concept design, that is also an iterative process. You'll go through and you'll make changes. You can do a lot of things in this area to alleviate the next step. By the time you're done with it and you're happy, you engage with the engineering, and the engineering team creates your engineering documents. Your engineering documents is essentially your blueprints and your bill of materials. So The blueprints are, it's obvious what those are. They're blueprints, just like a house blueprint. It's all of the pieces and parts broken out into the size and specs that they're supposed to be. And the bill of materials is essentially just a list of all those things. And it's comprehensive. It is everything from high-level large parts down to tiny little screws and hinges and springs.
And like little rubber pieces. And
Everything needs to be included in that bill of materials. And this is where you start to really see where the importance of following this comes into play. If you just go get yourself a prototype and pricing and don't have these elements, you're already behind the eight ball. You're already screwing yourself, because how are you going to know what your pricing is going to be if you don't know all the parts that are going to go in there and the costs for those parts and make sure they're correct? Then it moves into the prototyping stage. So once you've done your concept design and you've got your engineering documents and you're ready to start making your first prototype. And so once you kind of sign off and make all the changes, that process could take a week and it could take a couple of months, going back and forth with the engineers, discussing materials, the industrial designer making some revisions to it, trying to nail it in as good as you can and have that as perfect as you can before you go to prototypes. And you'll reduce a lot of shit and headaches in the prototyping stage, which is typically the longest part of the product development process. It really is the development part of product development. So there are several different prototypes or terms for the prototypes, and I'll tell you a little bit more about those. But the more time you spend in nailing down the concept early on and really nailing down the engineering aspect, the prototyping phase goes much smoother. But there will be prototypes.
it's not just one.
I've never ever, I'm sure it has happened. I'm sure someone's that good. I've never seen a first working prototype come out and nail it, signed off, and went to manufacturing. In fact, just depending on the complexity, I have some friends who have gone through over 100 prototypes. Luckily, they weren't high cost goods. There was a lot of sewn material in there. But yeah, it can be several prototypes, and prototypes can cost quite a bit. They're gonna be much higher than your finished good when you're done. They can be 5,000, 8,000, 10,000, 200,000. If you're making a helicopter, gosh knows how much a prototype would cost there. But the prototypes is really the drawings, all the dreams, all the everything else coming to life, and you're going through a process now of fine tuning that idea down to where you can go to the next phase, which is tooling and master sample. So once I have gone through all the prototypes and I signed off on my last one and it's really close, and when I say really close, depending on your product, you probably won't, there'll be some red lines, which we'll discuss red lines. There'll be some things still not perfect because the prototypes are being made in whatever style or way they can make them before they create your tooling. And the tooling is going to remove a lot of the blemishes. It's going to remove a lot of gaps. It'll add finish to the process. For instance, if you are creating something in metal that's going to eventually have like a rubber finish on a handle, but that's not going to be done until everything's done. So your prototype, it's all going to be mocked up. Some of it might be 3D printed, and parts might be 3D printed. The whole thing might be 3D printed before you get to the tooling stage where you're knocking those out. You're making molds to replace 3D printed parts. You're actually using the laser cutters and the dies involved in making it perfect. So your final prototype, you want to get it as close as you can and be comfortable with making the next step because it's expensive. People do not consider tooling enough, and you, again, as you're going through every one of these steps, you're constantly trying to get an idea of pricing. You always want to know, what are my prototypes going to cost? And if I have to do 2, is that as costly? You know, the project we have currently going on, if we ordered 4 prototypes at one time, we basically got them for half the price, because they had to order a certain amount of material to make just 1 prototype, and you can make 4 out of that amount of material that we had to buy. All that was involved, so we had to pay for that material no matter what. So now all that's involved is labor involved in bending the material and creating the prototype. So buying 4 was a much better deal. We decided not to do that. We decided to go ahead and just have the 1 made, paid for all the material, because we knew there was going to be quite a few revisions, and I didn't want to have 4 prototypes that I can't use. And so we had the 1 made and just had that stockpiled, made our red lines, and made another one out of the rest off that same material. So our material cost was amortized, and we did it that way. But so there's costs involved in all of these different areas, and the changes that you make the cost go up on your prototypes, but they also have an effect on your end cost of goods. And so the tooling and master sample phase, they're going to, once you decide this is my prototype, I like this, there will be a few changes when I get my tooling made and make my master sample. So you pull the trigger, you pay for the tooling, you shell out your $10,000 or your $180,000 or your $250,000 to make all the molds and the dies and everything involved in mass producing this. They take that and they gear up the equipment and they make a master sample. They might make several. They'll probably will make several till they fine tune everything. But by the time they're done using the tooling, creating the tooling, using the tooling, and nailing down the process, they're going to hand you the perfect good. It is what will be produced from now on. It is, and when you sign off on the master sample, and if you're using a good vendor, that master sample will be perfect when it hits your door, or actually he should be at the factory.
Yeah.
So, but by the time you get your master sample, that is what you're going to get. You're going to get 1,000 of those. So if there's anything wrong there, you better make sure you catch it. And it could be just something off with the tool made, might be a blemish. But all of the little blemishes that were in the final prototype should be gone. You know, you should have nice, clean lines. It should fit tight. It should work perfectly the way you want it to. And that's your master sample. When you sign off on it, goes to the final stage of development, which is your initial order run. And your initial order run is where I place my first order, essentially. I mean, makes sense. Initial order run, my first order. Initial, first, get it?
Yep.
I should have called it first order run. I don't know. Anyhow, MOQ, so through this entire process, the moment that you start to engage with the part where you need to get prototypes made, you're wanting to know what your cost of your goods are going to be, you start asking as early on as possible, even though I know, and I'm telling you, that you're not going to know until that final prototype is signed off on. You're not going to know what your real cost of goods are going to be until you're making your master sample. You'll know the bill of materials is perfect. Every part is known. Every piece is done. Your final prototype is done. And you sign off on that final prototype, you're able to get a very, very close or even perfect, hopefully perfect, this is what my cost of goods are going to be.
Well, here's the way I look at it, Robo, is, you know, at the very beginning of the process, when you're looking at estimates, your range is going to be
Yes.
much bigger, and then you're just funneling it down as you get towards the very, very end to where you know exactly what it is. But
That's
you're
right.
at least able to work with ranges.
Absolutely.
And they may be big.
And even though they're not correct,
Yep.
it's good to know. It's good to know, and because you're going to be updating your pro forma, you're going to be updating your sheet based off of the changes as you go. How did this affect my overall change? And I ask that constantly in this process. When we get a prototype in, we do our redlining stage and we go, okay, so I'm replacing this handle with this other one. How does that affect the cost? And and the knowledgeable team will say, well, the first one you made was sort of a standard handle. We're going to actually have to make the handle that you want, and that's going to affect it by, between $12 and $15, because we're going to have to, but then it also affects my tooling, because now I've got to make a tool to make that part instead of just getting a standard one. And so the initial order run, by the time you're there, you know what all your costs are, because you're making the order. And this is what my expectation is. This is the check I'm going to cut. And they're going to ask you from the very beginning, how many do you need? That's their common response. When you say, how much is this going to cost? They're going to respond with, how many do you need? And you probably won't know, especially if you're just, if this is your first time, you don't have experience in the market and selling things, and you may not know. So there's two ways to go about this. One is that we early on, we start the marketing process right at the beginning. Like the day we kick off our very first sketches, we'll actually kick off some ideas on how will we take this to market. And so the marketing plan will help drive what I'm going to need. We have a plan set up that I think we can make or sell 1,000 of these within the first month. 1,000 is what I'm looking at as my initial order. But also you can go back and say, what is my minimum order quantity? And a lot of, most of the experienced manufacturers, the production team, they'll know in a range of what the minimum order will be. They're not going to tell you one, which they'll make you one, but it's going to be an expensive one. So what they'll do is that they'll use, their rule of thumb is that they take a look at what their minimum order quantities are. They're going to have to order a certain amount of materials to make this, and they'll know that just tooling up their factory, because they're going to have to change out the tooling on their factory. I'm not going to change this all up to make you 50 of these. So they're going to ask you, how many do you need? And you need to work on that on the marketing side, which is a whole other training module. But on the manufacturing side, you can go back to them and say, well, what's the fewest? What was the other? There was another aspect we talked about earlier, shipping, transportation. So transportation will have a big factor in this, because if you're ordering overseas, which a lot of you will be, if you're ordering overseas, you're going to have to, depending on how you're going to deliver, you can fly them. If they're a lightweight product, you can fly them, and that really opens up your options on, how many. But at some point, even if they're lightweight, at some quantity level, it's way better to put them on the ground and on the water. And they use containers as their rule of thumb. So you can order a full container, you can order a half container, and you can order partial containers. And the shipping managers, the shipping experts will help you, navigate that process. Like I said, a lot of the vertical integrated companies, they'll have a shipping specialist that will be working on the shipping part of it the whole time. And so you'll for instance, this one of our projects, we found out that 250 of our products fit on a container. So that fills a container. So we want to fill a container to maximize our shipping. And so we went back and said our minimum, our order that we need is 250. So that's the number we're going off of, is 250. We could make 100, but our shipping costs go way up. Our production costs go way up. So it doesn't work out. So 250 is sort of our sweet spot. And then also for future orders, I know that I'm doing it in increments at 250. I want to order this container load. I want to price break at 500. I want to price break at 1500, and so on. Mm-hmm. So those will help you figure out how to know what to say when you're asked that question, and then you know the question now to go back and ask them. Concept design, pretty obvious. This is probably where you're going to hire your first team member. We're going to go into the team in more detail after this, because that's so important. That is the make or break, is hiring a good quality team. And knowing how to do that is just imperative in this process. And so that's really usually where you engage, unless you, like I said, unless you know the software packages and know about SketchUp and have that, skill. You're going to be hiring an industrial designer, engage with someone. That's the first time you're going to actually be hiring somebody to step in and help you out. And then you're going to be hiring experts all the way along. I like to call them team or partners, because I really want you to think that way. I want you to think that this isn't just Joe Blow person. I really want to have a relationship with them, because this is my future, first of all. If I treat them like a team member, if I treat them like a partner in this process, and I engage with them on that level, then our working relationship is going to be a much better relationship all the way around.
And they're going to be more excited about working on your project.
By far.
I mean, they're going to have some level of ownership in it.
Yeah, and I had the luck. I was lucky early on. 20 years ago when I had my first business, I hired a lot of virtual, people, as well as just a lot of contractors, and I treated them. I learned to treat them that way, and it alleviated so many problems that a lot of other people find. I have discussed products that have failed because someone, hired people on Upwork and treated them like a contractor vendor, and problems ensued. And so if you extend that right out there and think of it that way, it really does help. I also want to go into a little bit more on the prototype. So we talked about all these different areas, but prototypes are so important that I want you to know more going in. So the main prototypes that you'll be working with, these terms, I call it vernacular. These terms are my terms. These terms are terms that our team uses. Other companies, other development firms, other people like that, they may have their own terms. Make sure you clarify what those are. Get on the same page, because sometimes you're working on a certain prototype where you think it's here and they think it's over here. So get clarification on. So when we do prototypes, it's not just a prototype. What prototype is this? The rough prototype obviously is your first prototype that you make. We call it a mock-up, but a lot of people call it the first prototype. I call it Frankenstein. The next one's the virtual. That's actually the concept design, and a lot of people don't even consider that a prototype, but I definitely consider it a prototype. The virtual prototype, the software these days is so amazing. I mean, you can spin your product around. You can look at every angle. You can open lids. You can shut lids. You can pull drawers out. You can treat it just like a prototype sitting here. And so you can do a lot of iterative process with the virtual prototype. And what we were talking about,
we were talking about making videos with it.
Yes, that's kind of the coolest new thing on the block is the ability to take some of these softwares and you create a video. The video we're talking about and that we're developing right now is all of the pieces and parts of an apparatus just scattered out in space like the stars. And then the video comes where they all just start to converge and come together, and they fit in their slots, and screws screw in, and it just comes together. You may have seen some online. Microsoft has a really cool video of the Surface, and that's what they use. They basically use the rendering software, and they created a video using that same thing. So we're building one right now to help showcase it. We want to use it for our sales videos. We're going to use it for our investors, because it's really slick and sexy, and but it's considered a prototype. The working prototype is when you take your blueprints, your bill of materials, your concept art, and you begin the actual prototyping, hardware prototyping phase. And the working prototype is 1 to 1,000. I mean, this is the longest part of prototyping, is going through the iterative process of this prototype, making your red lines to that prototype, making red lines to that one. And each one, your goal is that the red lines will be fewer and fewer and fewer. The very first working prototype you get we call it the fit and function prototype, which is essentially it's going to be pretty rough. If your expectation that it's going to be close to what you want, I want you to be prepared. It may not. It may not be the same materials. It might be materials that they have on hand that they can use. But it is the fit and function prototype, which is the first one, is just to make sure shit fits and shit works. We want this slide opening. Does it slide opening? And how does that work? And is there a better way? That's mostly what I use, is that this is another chance for me to be creative. I've solved a problem with my product, but now I got to solve problems in my product. So I'm going in there and I'm saying, I think that we have a workaround to the way this slides.
Well, then it's also your first opportunity well, it's your second opportunity, but the first one with what is getting closer to your final product, to see how you use it, how it feels.
Getting your hands on it, and the materials used. So like I said, the materials may not be your final materials, but they'll be close. And so you're able to really get an understanding of this is my thing, and now I got to go to work on it. And I always think of all these stages, it's like clay. You're molding clay until I have my final work of art. So this is just clay. I'm taking the fit and function prototype. I'm going through it and I'm making sure all of this stuff that we concepted, everything that was on, because things that are on the virtual don't necessarily work in the real world.
Well, shit, Robo. I mean, hell, we're talking about a go-go desk right now, right? And we're talking about how people are going to use it. And we're working with, I guess it's more of a Frankenstein still, but
Yeah.
it's fucking heavy.
Oh yeah. This is, by the way, this is the product we're going to be using during the actual action program. We're going to use, it's called the Go-Go Desk. This is Frankenstein prototype number 2 or 3. The camera's sitting on number 4.
Yep.
The first one was almost laughable because it was duct tape and things like that. And so as we discover new problems, we make iterations to it, and we are at the stage now where we're developing the concept art for this and redesigning the entire tripod system and the way it connects, because the things that I can get a hold of to incorporate into this, they're just not, I mean, it's just wobbly. It doesn't have stability. It shows people how it works. It's going to be a mobile standing desk that I can break down, throw it into a backpack. But there's so much that has to go into this. I mean, we're really going through a lot of detail on stiffening things that are too loose, creating our own docking system so that it fits our needs. But this is the working stage. Well, this one's actually still what we call the rough.
Yeah.
But once the concept art is done and we go through the engineering part and figure out exactly how this is going to work, we'll be making our first fit and function prototype, and I'm really excited about that because that's going to be pretty cool. And more to the point, so our first working prototype, this particular system, the Go-Go Desk, I have come up with an idea to put a battery in it so that you can take it out in the field and plug your computer and your phone in and work all day. And so the first prototypes that I get, even at that stage, won't have that in there. We want to work out a lot of bugs before we incorporate the electronics, because by the time we incorporate electronics, that's a whole nother level of difficult. And the final prototype, obviously, it's where you've gone through the entire working prototype phase, made all your changes, everything gets better and better and better until finally you and the team are looking at it and the engineers say, we can't get what you want done anymore without tooling. We can't get any more done without, building out your dies, using other machines to make this, and that's your sign off. So you sign off on your final, and you go into the next phase of your tooling and your master. I keep saying red lines. Red lines, it's a term we use. It's pretty common in the industry. Not everybody uses it, but it's essentially just your changes. It's when we get our first fit and function prototype, the Dragon Grill, the first prototype we got had over 250 red lines from it to the next one. And what we do is that I let everyone involved on the team make their own red lines. So the industrial designer got to make red lines, the engineers got to make red lines, the production manager got to make red lines, and then we made red lines. And
everyone does that in separate rooms.
Separately. We did separately. We didn't. I don't like to do it all together because there's things that I may not agree with, or there's things that I might catch if I'm doing it separately. Then we take all the red lines and we compile them into a master list, and we agree on the master list before you send that back to the production manager who's going to make your next prototype. Because and what you're hoping for is when you get that next prototype, all that shit's gone. It won't be. It won't be, but it will be a much smaller list. So every time you get a prototype, you're doing your red lines, which is just your changes, and you need to be very, very thorough in that process. You're also, this is the place where you have to know when to push and when to pull, because they're going to tell you certain things can't be done, and you may not agree. Of course, they might be experts, but I've had people tell me that can't be done because they didn't really know. We had to bring in another engineer who had a different level of experience, and he said, yeah, we did that for the aerospace industry. There you go. He figured it out. So it's usually at the level of they're saying things can't be done is a lot at the level of their experience. So don't be afraid. And one way that I just thought of this. One of the reasons that I do ask for things that I'm like, because I've seen it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. What I'm asking for there is on my computer. You see this seam? I want this seam. And they told me that you can't make that seam any better. No, look at this one. Mm-hmm. And so then we can, I look to all kinds of other, like the mood boards, which we'll talk about. I look to other things to get inspiration, but I also use those as that's what I want there because I know that can be done. That's just a sidebar. But so redlining is the process of making those changes, and there's going to be changes. And you have to know something. The reason that your second one comes in, it's going to have red lines too, is because when you make one little change here, it's going to affect the entire piece. You make a material change, it's going to affect the entire piece. Till you get that next one, you don't know how it affected it per se. You can do a lot of preliminary. Your engineers will really help in that area, but you really don't know until the next prototype's made, and you'll see all the effects that it had. And so the redlining is a very important aspect. There was something else I wanted to talk about during the prototyping stage is be open-minded. That was it. Be open-minded. Like I said, I want that, but you have to be able to be open-minded enough that and usually it comes from the industrial designer. The industrial designer is going to come with a lot of really cool ideas, really good ones that know the entire process, will come to the table with solutions you never even thought of and really cool stuff. And you need to be open-minded enough to say, yeah, let's do that. Let's make that change. Let's add that to this. They're problem solvers. The good ones are really incredible problem solvers with a lot of experience, and they'll help guide you through that to make it a better product.
That reminds me of a quote I think it was attributed to Steve Jobs, and it went something like this. We don't hire really smart people to tell them what to do. We hire really smart people who will sometimes tell us what to do.
Tell us what to do. Yeah, that's exactly true. So, which brings us to the next part, which is the product development team. So we've talked about the team. We've shown you high level the different roles played. I want to drill down just a little bit more because it's really important to know the nuances here so you make better decisions. So there's two main categories that are considered part of product development. The design and development team, and that's going to consist of an industrial designer. We talked about the engineer. They're incorporated in that, and the engineers break down into a lot of these break down into subsections. There are industrial designers who do specialty, work. There's engineers who are materials engineer, there's electrical engineers, there are software engineers. So the engineers are several different areas of specialty and knowledge. The project manager, so project manager is if you're working with a good team, a project manager is a lifesaver. They kind of walk everything through. Sourcing manager, people who are going to actually, once you get to the point where we need to start getting pricing, they can help you find manufacturing. They can help source, materials. They're a pretty handy person to have. A lot of times, if you're working with, I'm going to explain the different types of teams out there. But a lot of times, the industrial designer might be an engineer. The project manager might do the sourcing. It's those elements can cross over and can be one person, but those are roles that are very, very important, and they're played in this whole aspect. And then the second vertical would be manufacturing, and the key people you need to know about in the manufacturing, just like everything else, there's could be 1,000 different roles within manufacturing, but these are the key people that you'll be working with, which would be your production manager. If you're working with a manufacturing company and they have a really good production manager, they're lifesavers. Production managers can save you a lot of money, a lot of headache, a lot of time, reduce things. Quality control, this might be the production manager, but typically there's a quality control person, and quality control is also overseen by you, and we'll discuss the quality control aspect. Shipping and fulfillment might come from your manufacturer. We talked about earlier getting a price to get my product manufactured and put on your dock. Then I want a second price to get from the dock to my front door, and getting those as separate. You also might look at, and we do this a lot, there are specialists that do nothing but shipping, and they're freight specialists, and so we'll get another price from them from the dock to my front door. They have a lot of workarounds, and they might be a lot cheaper than my manufacturer's shipping. So, but that shipping, the freight expert is who you're looking for. And then I've also included marketing, graphic design, because during this process, there is a point where you're going to have to do packaging, and it might be something as simple as, just a card with a clamshell. It might be something very complex with multiple layers and molded parts to it, and a lot of graphics and printing. And you might have a lot of inserts that you want to include in that. All of that needs to be thought through during this production process, because not only is it very, very, very important if you're making consumer goods to have kick-ass killer packaging, but it's also a cost. It takes someone's time, and there's costs involved. So I include the graphic design here because it needs to be thought of during this phase.
Well, I also like that you brought up marketing here, because we're able to, going through this process, create a lot of material.
Absolutely. Oh man, we do it every time. We capture material for marketing purposes from day one, from concepting all the way through the prototypes. We try to build a portfolio of assets that we can use at any time to help promote the product. If we pull into a pre-launch, which is launching before we're really launching, we're trying to get interest or pre-orders. We use those assets to tell the story of the hard work involved in this, and it's all part of a very comprehensive marketing program. So where they fit, essentially, we kind of went through a little bit of this, but you bring in your industrial designer is usually the first person that you bring in, and the engineering team comes in at the engineering aspect. Production manager typically comes in when you're getting ready to do the prototypes. The production manager will work with the engineers and your designer to develop the prototypes, whether or not you're using a vertical firm who has all of these people in-house. They'll have a production manager that may or may not be at their facility here, that might be at their manufacturing plant if they're that vertical. Some a big portion of the firms don't do the manufacturing, and that's actually a good thing. But they have a person who can do production management and quality control for this entire process. That's the person that's going to be doing the sourcing and helping with all that. So they'll either have an in-house production manager, or you'll hire a freelancer who has that experience to help oversee getting the prototypes made and all the pricing involved. After the prototyping phase, or even during the prototyping phase, depending on what your production manager has recommended and what your plan is going forward, is you bring your manufacturer in at the master sample, or either at the prototyping or when you're getting ready to manufacture. You will already have communicated with them, hopefully, before this, so you can start gathering prices. So your production manager would have already started sourcing potential manufacturing partners, provided them as much documentation as that they can, to start to get an idea of who we want to choose. So by the time we're done with prototyping and we're signing off on that final prototype, that's what the manufacturer is going to use to roll out and build out dies. We often have some prototypes made either by us or by a prototyping firm specializes in prototyping. But when we get clear down toward the end, we'll engage the manufacturer. I like for them to have their hands on the product before we create dies. I like them to make the final couple of prototypes, or they might make them all. We've had manufacturers that make all the prototypes, that we engage with them early on. We chose a vendor because they're very skilled in what we're looking for, knowledgeable. They have a great team. Their pricing is good. Of course, we vet it. We always get 2 or 3 quotes, and we choose a manufacturer early on and let them do the prototyping all the way through. And there's a benefit to that.
Well, yeah, and I think the benefit is even from the beginning, you're closer towards the final prototype.
Right. Right. So it's as you go through this process and you start to work with the team, if you vet and find a good team, they're gonna educate you a lot on how this process works and where it's going, and they'll have some of their own methodologies that we don't. It might be different than ours, might be more complex, might be simpler. But they're going to really help guide you. If you're going to hire an industrial designer, you want to hire one that's had shit made, right? So because he's had shit made, he knows this is the right process. This is where we're going. We're going to use, on our prototyping, we're going to go ahead and use a manufacturer. Here's my recommendations. That initial product development team is going to really be an important part of your success going forward. I can't emphasize that enough. I add graphic design here because you should be, during the prototyping stages, you'll start to nail down the actual specific footprint of your product, and that's where you can bring your graphic designer in to start developing your packaging based off the requirements of that product. And I like to use graphic designers who specialize in consumer goods packaging. They'll have resources. These different skills bleed over everywhere these days. So manufacturers have graphic designers that can develop packaging now. Production development teams have designers that do packaging. They're what was once pretty walled off skill sets have now kind of all over the board. And then finally, like we said, you're going to be engaging shipping, fulfillment at the initial order. Now I know how much my product weighs. I know the packaging, the size of the packaging. I can start to put together how much this baby's going to cost me to get it to my warehouse. And then overall, your project manager, depending on, depending on the situation, your project manager can fit in anywhere, but usually from the very beginning. They're the ones that just oversee everything. They're the ones that are responsible for keeping track of deadlines, changes, all that stuff. And quite honestly, it might be you.
That's what I was going to say, is depending on your budget considerations.
Exactly. Yes.
This could be.
It might be you. And you need to act that way anyways. You essentially are the de facto project manager because you're going to be involved in this entire process. And we've given you a lot of the skills to be able to do that properly. And we've got more to give you. But these teams, like if you hire a product development firm that has industrial design and engineers on staff, and they probably will have a project manager, but sometimes they don't. I've worked with several that don't have that key person because it's not really it's sort of an added value feature. It's not a monetized role. So some of the small boutique firms, they don't have that person. If you're really tight on budget and you're hiring every single one of these people as an individual freelancer, then you're definitely acting as the project manager. So, but I wanted to make sure that you know where that role is. It's just sort of an overall arching role. All right, let's talk about finding and choosing these people, finding the right partner. Again, I use team members and I use partners. And you have a lot of options here. And so the way I'll break it down is I'll start with the size. If depending on your budget, I'm going to pull these up. There are freelancers. There are really, really good freelancers out there in every single phase that we talked about. There's really good industrial designers. There's really good engineers. There's really good specialists in every area. There's really good people who just do nothing but sourcing. There's really good individuals who do nothing but the shipping and delivery. I have a woman in Nacona, Texas, who's been in the freight business for 30 years, I think, and there's nothing she can't ship, and there's nothing that she can't, save money on. She's a wizard, and she's a freelancer. And you ought to see her house; it's crazy. But so size matters, and what I mean by that is that the freelancers, the difference between freelance and boutique and firm and corporation is basically size. Freelancers are just what that means. It's just an individual who is a specialist in a certain area. There are a lot of really good freelancers who have crossover. There's a lot of engineers who have manufacturing experience. There's a lot of industrial designers who have all of the experience. There are boutique firms. So a lot of times what happens is that, you go to engineering school, you graduate, you go get a job, you work for Boeing, and then you go to work for Lockheed, and pretty soon you're just sick and damn tired of the big corporate world. So, and you're really good and you have a ceiling, and you get together with some other engineers and a couple of industrial designers that you love, you bail out and you start your own firm. Or you are a freelancer that teams up with others and create a firm. And I call them boutiques because it's a way for me to delineate them from the big firms, the corporate firms. So the corporate firms are full scale, turnkey everything. They have all of the people. They have the account managers, they have production managers, they have, more than likely the big corporate firms have manufacturing. They control the manufacturing process now. So they have under their roof, they'll have everyone that you need. They're a turnkey way to go about this. And some of them are huge, and I've been to their corporate headquarters and it just blows your mind. I mean, their capabilities, the beautiful products they make, it really is incredible. Frog Design and companies like that who've helped, Apple and all them develop these, products that we just go crazy over. Some of these, firms are the ones that are behind all that, and you don't even know it usually. So, the big corporate firms, the my favorite group is the boutiques. I get quite a bit of turnkey. I get, all, 3 or 4 different team members all under one roof. The advantage there is that they communicate, like the big corporate firms, they're able to they have a working relationship. They all play a key role. Communication happens much better. Sometimes the boutique firms might be just 2, 3, 4 people. Sometimes they're 8, 10 people, and their capabilities are pretty broad. There is a trend now where these boutique firms are combining or are having access to manufacturing. So they're handling the manufacturing aspect as well. They'll have partnerships in America. They'll have partnerships overseas where they can even turnkey the manufacturing aspect. So the benefit of working with a boutique over a corporation is price and it's intimacy. And I really like boutique firms because I'm pretty important to them, and I get a broad group of skills all under one roof. If I create a good relationship with them, my projects go really well. If you aren't able to, most of the people here are not going to be able to hire a corporation. You're paying for a lot of overhead. You're
Paying for that fancy office.
I'm telling you. So just for fun, a few years ago, I took a project and I contacted freelancers and I got pricing on doing my industrial design. I got pricing do my engineering from freelancers. I got all the pricing involved in the entire process and from freelancers. And then I went and got 3 different prices from boutique firms. And then I got 2 prices from big corporate firms for the same project. And for me to do it through freelance from start to finish, and of course, this was just estimates, right?
Yeah.
So just getting up to my prototyping, just getting all the elements in place and getting estimates on my prototypes, which you can get ballpark estimates if it's a fairly simple product. They're able to say, each prototype's going to cost you for that bottler, it's going to cost you, $200. And then if you do 1,000, we do things similar that cost, $4.85 a piece, but you got to order 1,000. So you can get depending on the product, you can get a pretty good estimate on the outcome. And I want to say that I should go look up my notes again. It was $110,000 to do freelance. It was $225,000 to use a boutique firm, and the average corporate firm was over $500,000, $600,000. 110, 600,000. So price is a big issue. Now, there are times when you have the ability and you're going to want to pull trigger on a big firm, but they're mostly catering to other corporations, other companies. They do take on some things, but most of the time they're corporations. So your budget will drive the decision for this. My preference is boutique firm because of the communication, but I use freelance all the time still. If we need to save money in a certain area, let's just hire a freelancer to knock that part out. Once they're done with that, we'll look at firm later on. Referrals. So let's, so we talked about, the difference between the vendors out there and where do you find them. So the best place obviously is referrals. And you really can, if you join some inventor groups, we have the Inventors Clan, you can get a lot of information about vendors, good ones, bad ones. And from, inventors forums and groups like the Inventors Clan, you can, a lot of these people have used them. We share it all the time, like good places to get different outside vendors in those groups. You'll learn a lot. If you go in there, don't go in there blind and just start asking for a vendor. Go in there and create, be part of that community. It's just beneficial for you, and you'll learn a lot going down through the old threads. They'll probably have answered that question a dozen times already. So that's a great place to go get referrals. Online directories, designdirectory.com is a big one. you're not getting a referral, so you're not really sure what you're getting. There's good, bad, and ugly on all of these platforms. So, you know, they have some really good resources there. It's a very big directory. Not everybody's on there. There's a lot of firms that just won't go on there. But you can find some pretty quality talent through that source. And there's other directories that are popping up. But you can find, you know, small freelancers. You can find a lot of boutiques on there, and you can find some larger firms, and dig through that whole thing. And then the gig platforms. So if you need to hire a freelancer, the best places are Upwork. FreeUp has access to a lot, and then CAD Crowd for, you know, specific design and development of your CAD drawings, your engineering aspect. The Upwork's probably going to be your best bet for finding a freelancer in this particular niche, and they have great search tools. And I want to really emphasize. Do we talk later on about? So I'm gonna back up a step here, and I'm going to emphasize, much like we did in finding an attorney. You have to have a very thorough vetting process. You need to. This is like a job interview. You don't reach out and contact the first one, get a price, and engage. That's a recipe for disaster. You need to. Step one is that you figure out, do I want to use a freelance, a boutique firm, or a corporation? That'll help you weed out a lot of searching. You figure out what size of partner you want, and now you've narrowed that down. When you start to do your vetting process, it begins with finding those particular firms of that size or those freelancers. Once you start finding that pool, you go in and you start to look at their portfolio. Step one is look at their portfolio. What work have they done up to this point? And you're looking for quality. You're not looking to find your product, but it can help. You'll find a lot of these experienced people have worked on hundreds and hundreds of products. And if it's made out of, you know, plastic and has a lid and that probably have worked on something that's similar or similar enough. And, you know, we've made quite the stretch on some of the things. We've used vendors who specialize in, you know, vending machines to build out a consumer goods before, because they had the specialties in the materials. And I really love the design. So their design was really, really badass. And it was, you know, the materials were similar to the ones we wanted, and the design style match. So I got pricing from them. I vetted them out. They're a really great group. So you go through their portfolio. What you're looking for is style is the first thing I look for. I just go through portfolio really fast. I'm looking for style, because whether it be the freelance boutique or corporation, they specialize in a certain style. Their design is a certain design. Everything they've got is really contemporary. I'm looking for something a little bit more homemadey, or, you know, more, you know, Euro trash. So I don't even know if that's a term. So you're looking for style right off the bat. I want to see if it's really cool stuff. Also, a high level is this guy good at consumer goods, or is he more industrial? That's probably the first phase. Is this guy does a lot of industrial design, but it's all industrial commercial stuff. He's done parts and pieces for HVAC systems. He's done, you know, he doesn't specialize in consumer goods, and that's a big difference. Trying to get somebody in any part of this phase, whether it be the designers, the engineers, all the way down through manufacturing, who they do commercial goods, and you're trying to develop a consumer good, then that's the first delineating factor. And you might be developing your invention might be a commercial good. It might be being sold to industrial partners. So that, again, you're going to want to go towards someone who has that industrial portfolio. So I start with that. Then I look at the style. and to see if I like their style. They don't have to have something exactly what I have in mind, but I'm looking for little hints that they're capable of it.
Maybe some kind of category or
Yeah. Yep. They might specialize in electronics, and mine has electronic function. They might specialize in nothing but toys and plastic goods, and mine is made out of metal and computer software. So I'm looking for characteristics in their portfolio that represent something that I'm feeling confident. I want to see a lot of work in the portfolio, and so I just start portfolio hopping. I literally just for me it's I can stop at a website and in 60 seconds I'll know to move on, and I just start that, and I create a hit list. Like that one, I write it down. Like that one, write it down. Nope. Like that one, write it down. And I'm creating a hit list. And what I'm trying to do is I'm going to compile, 6 to 8 of these that I really like. And then I'm going to go back to those and I'm going to start to dig in. I'm going to go look at the About Us page. I'm going to read more about what background they have, what services they offer, who's on their team. I want to get a feel for, are they here? Or, a common trend right now is 2 guys in Detroit have a little shop set up, and they're out. The rest of their team's all in India, and so they're getting everything done there. I'm not saying, I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that I can find out a lot about that. There's a firm that I just saw the other day. 2 partners. One of them was in America. The other one was in Asia. And they're partners, and you could obviously tell who was overseeing what and where the team was really at. And so you're just looking for, you're digging in a little deeper. You're looking for those elements that you really want to see in a team that you think you're going to engage with and create a partnership around. On the surface, do I like these people? If their portfolio is good, if the other information that they provide, some of the case studies, they'll have case studies that they showcase. They'll let you know what they actually worked on there. The services all match up with what I'm looking for, and then I can go into make my short list, like 2 or 3 of those people, those groups that I want to at least reach out to and begin an engagement process. So my first engagement is usually just an email. I just ping them email, tell them that I'm working on a new project. I'm pretty vague about what the project is. I like to keep a lot of that in the background. I just say I've invented a consumer good product that uses plastic molding and some sheet metal, and there's going to be required for some electronics in it. I try to give them the details to know that I've chosen them because it has all these things. I'd love to discuss with you, more detail about your firm and what you have to offer. And you might even go as far as I've gone as far as like trying to get them a little excited about the project by saying the reason that I'm developing this in this, outdoor market is because it's a growing market. I see a lot there. I have knowledge and experience in that market. So that when they finally, because they're getting hit all the time, they're doing vetting process as well. They get inventors call them up. Here's my sketch, how much to make one, right? Constantly. So when I engage at this point, knowing all the stuff I'm engaging thoughtfully. I'm going through this process. I'm giving them enough information that they know that they can do it. It fits their scope of work and their capabilities. But they get a little excited about it and want to weed me and put me on top of a lot of other projects and have them call me. So then that's the next step typically, is that I contact them that way. Sometimes it'll just be nothing but emails. But a lot of times I get on the phone, and discuss it with maybe 1 or 2 of their team members. If they're located, like I've driven to Dallas and Austin and Houston to sit down with them face to face and just kind of do a getting to know you process. Even before I do my first quote request. You don't have to do that. You can do a lot of the work just sitting at your computer and engaging with them that way. But I can't say it enough that you really got to be picky, and you need to have 2 or 3 or 4 that you can vet against. And you're going to get pricing from more than one. Even if you love this one firm and you've fallen in love with the first one you came across and, oh my God, this guy's so nice and they're perfect, they're so knowledgeable, and you need to have a reference point. And you can only get a reference point by having at least 3.
I got one question here as we're going through this. We need different people at different times. Industrial design, engineering, production manager. When do you, in your process, start to interview those pieces? Do you do it from the very beginning? Or do you kind of let the project go a little bit, and as you know they're going to be needed and according to your deadlines, 3 to 4 weeks out?
So, multifaceted answer would be, depends on my confidence level of where I'm at in the process. So if I don't engage with anybody outside until I've shown my product to potential clients, customers, and gotten feedback and know this is something I want to pursue and start to put together my funds. I take a personal inventory where I look at we talked about the personal inventory. I look at my resources I have available. I look at do I understand and know this market? And, what value can I bring? Is it going to be a winner? Because all these things align. But once I know that it's going to be a winner, right? So I've already got my Frankensteins and I've tested those. I'll go get my first price on getting that into a 3D format. I'll usually hire just an industrial designer that I know personally, does great work, understands a lot of things, and I'll get a price. Hey, here's my concept. Here's what I'm working on. And I'll send them a scope doc. Like we're going to go over the scope doc next. I'll send him my scope doc and some of the information, enough that he can go, hey, that looks like it's going to take me, 20 hours of work. That'll be $1,500. So now I've got my first price from a vendor to develop my first step, and get my concept design done. And I may just do that process at that point so that I can start to create my budget in my idea. Is this something now, $1,750 might be, oh my God, that's quite a bit of money. I might go, I have a credit card. I'll use my credit card, but I'll have that step done, right? So depending on, like we talked about the financing and the funding and getting ready for that, then once I engage with that, then I'll go to the next step. And so I will usually not go to the engineering level unless I've gone through my concepting stage. And while we're going through concepting, kind of nailing down some ideas, I'll know now, like specifically with this desk, which is funny we revealed that now, but it's going to be using wood, it's got metal, and it's also got electronics. This stanchion and this piece here, that's a mechanical engineer. So I'm going to have to definitely have either one really well-rounded engineer involved in this, or 3 specialists. I want to find an engineer that can help me, with the electronics component. We may find out that there is a standard electronic battery component that we can put into our unit that does everything we need. And that's what we're hoping for. Doesn't mean that that's true, but that's what we're hoping for. So if I want a materials engineer involved to help me figure out what is the best material to make this out of, and the mechanics of how this works. This is what I want it to do. And my industrial designer has said this is what his solution is. And he's going to take a look at it combined with the materials and all of his knowledge and say, okay, you can't make it out of that thin a material, that's going to break, or this isn't going to work. I mean, I won't go to that stage until I've kind of worked through a lot of my concepting and so on and so on. The phase for engaging with a production manager and doing my prototyping, the firm, I'm actually using a boutique firm who can do everything all the way through getting me manufacturing and helping me oversee it. They don't own manufacturing, but they have a lot of manufacturing partners. So they will be one stop where I'm going to get a lot of that stuff done as needed. they'll give me pricing. They can already give me pricing on the engineering.
Yeah.
They said, so that I know that it's $1,750 to get my design done. It's going to be another $650 to get my blueprints and my bill of materials. And I don't know, that's not the price. I'm just making that up as I go. And then once we get through there, they're going to start getting prototyping, and I'll get pricing on prototypes. They'll give me a pretty good ballpark early on for prototypes because they've done similar, they've done furniture design before, which this is basically kind of furniture. And so based on their expert assumptions and expert guessing, they're able to go, okay, your prototypes, you're looking at, we're looking at about $1,200, $1,500 a piece to do your prototypes. And that way now and it's just an estimate. I can't go to the bank with that, but I'm able to keep track of all that. And as we go closer, that can adjust in multiple ways. And so it's sort of like one step and then another and another, and you tee it up just sort of based on your rollout time. And if you are, funding this yourself and you don't have any money, it's going to be a slow process. So I might get my industrial designer to design me this really cool virtual prototype rendering of my thing, and I might carry that sucker around for a year before I'm able to. Right, as long as it, it just kind of depends on all that. But you will be getting pricing for the next thing way prior to the end of the first. You'll be starting to get pricing. So that being said, so how do you get pricing? This is our request for proposal, the RFP. So essentially, the first thing, it's just basically gathering prices for work. As I mentioned, I like to get 2 or 3. I don't like to get a whole bunch. It's just kind of confusing. I like to do a lot of my vetting process up front to where I've got 2 or 3 really good ones that I really like, and I'll reach out to them and I'll start this process. And so I like to get 2 or 3 proposals. Sometimes I'll get, some they'll turn me down. Like I'll pick my 3 favorites, and one of them will say we're just loaded up and slammed, or this isn't a project we're interested in, or you look like a douchebag on your social media profile. Whatever it is, you may not get proposals from everybody, but you really should try to get a triad if you can, as you get more experience and whatnot. And if you're getting referrals, you may not get 3, but I always say get a couple of quotes. And then you need to provide them information. So as we said before, you don't go with here's my sketch, how much to make this. So what is it that you actually go to them with? Well, the first thing is your sketch. I just said you don't do that. You take your sketches and your notes, and I like to take them all. I like to sit down with them with everything I have. So I have my shitty sketches and the good ones and all the little notations. I mean, you've seen my sketchbook where I think this should be Naugahyde. But I make little notes about what little functions I think. I can't draw that, so I'll just say this should flip over. This turns on. This isn't a worm. This is actually a handle. I make all my notes. A lot of times it's materials and usage, whatever. But I take all my notes in and I sit down and go over all my notes with them. I like to have them know my thought process of where I've gotten to. And I also create a scope of work, and I used to really overkill the scope of work. I wrote way too much. I'd write a damn novel. They don't necessarily need the scope of work or the SOW. It can be a very simple document. It needs to contain the description of my idea. Didn't we go over scope of work earlier not in this one, but
yeah, we did a little bit.
One of the other modules? I think we went into the scope of work, but essentially it's my description. This is the apparatus I've thought of is supposed to do this. This is how it functions. This is what I think it needs to be made out of. Then you need to go into what is it that I'm trying to solve, my objective. The reason that I've created this apparatus is because little kids get their fingers caught in the current apparatuses that are available, and I'm trying to alleviate that problem, and this was my solution. You need to tell them what your objective, what is it you're trying to solve. They're incredible problem solvers. They really are. The good ones are amazing at what they're gonna. And that brings up another point. You can have only some of it solved. There might be, I had this idea that I want to fix this. I think this would work, and I think this would work, but I don't know how all the other stuff would work. When you go to them, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, well, this is what we'll do here, this is what we'll do there. And there's a lot of them, like for instance, B Money, he has people that just come in and they just throw a problem out. They don't have a solution. They don't have a thing in their head. They're like, I have this problem. When I get in my car, my butt sticks to the seat and I don't like it. Can you give me a solution? And he will come up from nothing and create the entire thing. And I have companies that come to me and they say, okay, we sell coffee. And we're talking about this recent, we sell coffee. We've got, 8 or 10 products on the market, and we need more products. We're out of ideas. And so I'll start coming up with solutions. I'll take a look at the problems available. I'll interview them, and then I'll just create, here's 12 ideas. And they go, wow. And they choose one or not. So they're problem solvers. You just need to lay out what the problem is. If you have a lot of the solution, go ahead and present that. And that's all in your scope of work. And then I like to do mood boards. Your industrial designer's going to probably do a mood board. A mood board is kind of interesting. It's just kind of what it said. It's a style board or a mood board. It's just images that can be either downloaded off the internet or pulled and turn out of magazines. They're images to give the team an understanding of what I'm trying to communicate. Like my sketches kind of suck. My prototype was made in my garage. But here's what I'm thinking for the finish, and I'll provide them a picture of a piece of furniture. Here's what I'm thinking here, and I actually gave them a skateboard. This is a skateboard, and this is what they did here. I love the way this looks here, and so on and so forth. You give them, pictures. It can be houses, it can be grass, it can be textures, all of them, colors. That's what you're trying to give them an understanding of. When this thing is done, my shitty sketches aren't what is in my head. When this is done, I want it to look like this computer, or I want it to look like this toothbrush handle. You're trying to give them the fodder to communicate to them what you're looking for, and mood boards are a great way to do that. They're a really great way to do that. Deliverables. This is the last part, is that I want you to take this and give me a 3D concept art of it. I want you to give me 3 different versions. What is it that I'm looking for? What are the deliverables I'm looking for? And you may not quite know, but I'm telling you that when you get started, depending on where you're at in the process, you can ask for, this is what I think I'm asking for, but I'm not really sure if this is what I need. If they're doing their work and you let them know that, you say, I'm not really sure what I need here. If I'm at the engineering stage and I don't know anything about all of this, right? I don't know what I'm asking you to do. I just want this to work. So I ask you, I say, I need you to solve the problem of connecting the table to the base, and it's wiggly. So I need you to solve that problem. And so his deliverable, he'll take a look at it and go, okay, I can scope that out. This is what you're really wanting me to do. You're wanting me to do the structural aspect of this and that, and he'll throw down all the vernacular. You'll ask him, what does that mean? He'll explain it, so you're both on the same page. But now you have your deliverable. You can ask them for certain things, and then they're going to come back, and in their proposal, they're going to have, this is the scope of work. This is what we understand you want. This is what we're going to deliver, and this is how we're going to, this is the timeline for delivery, and this is how much it's going to cost. And that's what you're going to get. So when you get those proposals back, you get your first one, and you get your second one, you get your third one, you are going to review them. You're going to review them for clarity. You're going to read through the proposal thoroughly, and you're going to highlight the hell out of it, and you're going to marker it up, and you're going to underline things, and you're going to have notes like, I don't know what that is. I don't understand this. What does this mean? How does this work? Why is this in there? I don't want to pay for that. You're going to have a lot of, especially first few times, you're going to have a lot of questions, and you're going to have a lot of comments. Mark the hell out of it. And what you're looking for at that point is just like clarification on what does all this mean. I want to know and understand what I'm looking at. I've asked you to make me a car. This is really, I don't understand any of this stuff. Explain it to me. I'm a fourth grader, so to speak. So I like to go through them and try to make sure that I know what I'm being presented. I do not sign off on a proposal that I go, I didn't know what that was. I want to know. And then I'm also looking for deviations. And so that means is just pretty obvious that I get 2 proposals and I get a third. They're not going to be the same. I don't think I've ever had, request for a proposal where I got 3 proposals in and they were, those are all perfectly apples and apples. They, this firm's going to do all these things for me. This one's only going to do these things. And this one, has everything under the sun. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm looking at the deviations and I'm saying, okay, these are so different. I can't make a choice. I'm looking to try to make a choice. This firm obviously is going to give me more than this one. This one has more bullet points and line items, but their pricing is the same. So I need to contact one or the other and say, I just want to clarify some of the points on this proposal. I noticed that you have this, and this, but what about this, and this? And you're pulling from this. Getting these proposals is an amazing learning experience, by the way. It's really, I've never gone through a request for a proposal where I didn't learn something. And so what I'm looking for is make sure that I'm getting the same, apples and apples. I don't want apples and oranges. So if they are different, and that's what they're giving me is what they say they're giving me, and this one is obviously different, is this one closer to what I'm looking for than this one? Or maybe this one is, and that's just a bunch of fluffy over shit kill, and they just explained it to me. They go, well, we incorporate that. We have 4 line items. All that stuff's incorporated in those 4 line items, and here's why. Oh, I get it now. Yeah. They look a lot different, but I'm getting the same thing. You got to know those things. So you ask for clarification. You're making sure you're covering deviations. And then obviously you look at the price. You're like, okay, now I know what I'm getting. They're all pretty close in what my deliverables are. And my prices are either all over the board or they're very similar. Who knows what the hell? So at that point is when I start to use a combination of how I felt about the company. Like, I really like that company a lot. If these are all the same, now that's winning. A lot of times what I'll do is at that point, I'll, either go have a meeting or I'll definitely have a phone call. And I'll say, hey, let's go over your proposal together. And we'll walk through it line item by line item on the phone, and they'll explain it. And I like to do video calls. I'm trying to get, I want to know what this is all about. I want you to explain it to me. But I also, what I'm looking for is that mic. I have to carry the mic because I pace and I never know where to carry it. I'm not a professional here. So what I'm also looking for is I want to get a feel for how they handle me. I want to get a feel for, are they being really patient and thorough in helping me get through this proposal, or are they poo-pooing me and just and they're like, come on, and if that price is only going to be good for a while because prices are going up in metal and blah blah blah. I get a good feel for them when I go through that process. And I'm looking for someone that I feel like, again, man, I really want to create a partnership with this group. And most of them are going to be very helpful, but I have run across a lot of shit asses. That's you out there. You know who you are. That, I don't understand how some of these people stay in business. It drives me freaking nuts. but I guess they do. There's so much work that they can just shuck and jive them through and no problems. So in choosing a vendor, like I said, I'm reviewing the proposal. I want to look for deviations. When I'm discussing the proposal with them, I'm really looking for how they handle me, and I'm trying to get key signs of who I'm going to work with in the future. It's not a for sure deal, but it'll help you make that decision. This proposal here is $10,000 cheaper for the same work as this one. I didn't like them near as well, but $10,000 is $10,000. So you may be forced to do that. We do it all the time. We do choose based off of price. If they're close, I don't choose on price at all. I'll take a little bit of a hit on the price to work with the vendor I like the best. But if there's one that's really, what they're going to give me, I can hold them to it in our documentation. Then I'll go to the stage of where I'm starting to do my calls and referrals. So before I engage and sign on the dotted line, before I choose that for the final time and I commit my money to that one company, I call customers, and I don't have them give me referrals. I'll go into their portfolio. I'll find products. I'll find the company. I'll follow up with them, and I will ask them how they enjoyed the relationship with them. If I get good feedback there, it's on. And it's not always, I'll tell you this, so it's not always the referral itself, like calling them up and getting a reference, I should say, a reference, not a referral. Calling references isn't always bulletproof either, because I've called people before that said, those guys are a bunch of jack wagons, these are assholes, this was a horrible experience. Later on, I actually end up working with them. That company had another client that needed a marketing arm to come in and take over a product, right? So I started working with that company. I'm like, man, these guys are great, smart as shit. They know their stuff. And what happened is that I said, just have a question. You guys worked on this product. It's in your portfolio. And they're like, oh, that, yeah. Well, see, here's what went down. She didn't want to hear. She didn't want to learn. She didn't, she was so focused on getting it to market. She had a lot of money. Bada boom, bada bang, bada bing. The reference I called was the broken piece. I'm sure that confuses everybody even more, but calling references is a really good thing to do. But I just wanted to let you know that because I've seen it happen personally. So, all right. So, yeah. That's making a product. Mm-hmm. That's going and finding your vendors, getting your people. That's how you go through the process correctly. You can make that as hard or as simple as you want to. You can learn from others on how they do their process. We don't have the perfect process. But essentially, this as a guide should help you figure out call rejected. So we can edit in the back, but or not. Maybe we'll leave it in. Like we said, we're not professionals here. We just want the material to help our tribe. That we're building this. We built this out to help others. We have so many people that come to us that want to get things made, that want to get an invention done. The first thing that we do with our clients that we take on is they go through this. And they're by the time they're ready to go and they've gone through this, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to work with. It's so much a better relationship. It removes the veil and the ignorance and creates a better platform for success, which is what this is all about. And it helps you as the inventor know that this is a difficult process and it is costly. And I just don't want people to go through losing their money like I lost my money. And so that's the reason for this. But this is a lot of tools, a lot of things to go through. You may want to go back and start over. You may want to repeat certain sections, go watch other things, all that stuff. So, and I really should finish it though. The insider tips, which we always give, educate yourself, be open and inquisitive at every single module for every section. We always say that. The more you know, the better off you are. In the development process, like I said, you need to be open for suggestions and just be curious along the way. Create a communication plan and have status updates. So this is hiding back in here, but this is really freaking important. Okay. So normally, like I said before, people just, hey, here's a sketch, give me a prototype and give me a price. A lot of times also they enter into a relationship with their team, and they have not agreed on how do we communicate and how do we follow up and what is the plan. Most of the firms out there will provide a timeline of how this is going to go down. They'll have a project manager that's going to oversee that timeline, and they'll also have project management software that they use that tracks the progress, so you can get in a dashboard. All the questions are handled in there. So the most of the platforms that are available, you need to agree on. And when I say agree on, you need to buy into it as well. So we use a texting platform called Slack for our quick one-off questions as we go. And it's a great platform. Now we don't use, what I'm talking about is like on your smartphone, you have your text message. That is too, I use it for my projects. I use it for my mom, my wife, and my kids text me. So everything's coming in that platform. It's a horrible place to track business. Now, I do use it. Like, I do communicate with vendors I'm working with, partner vendors I'm working with. I use it to communicate with my clients that I'm working with, and even you. But those are, every time I use it on there, I know that if this question that I'm asking, or if this piece of communication gets lost in the ether, which it's gonna, then it doesn't matter. And this is the only time I use it. If I'm communicating and it does matter, like if I'm asking a certain question and your answer is important for something going forward, I always go jump on Slack. How many quantity did you say that was? Question mark? That's going to be on Slack, because you're going to come back and go, they said 250 to 500. Now it's in Slack and it's archived. It's searchable. It's a great program to do quick update questions on. So I use it. I always tell people I use it like I would. It's sort of like the hallway question. If we were all working in an office together instead of virtually, and I bump into you and they say, oh, hey, did you hear back from so-and-so on that proposal? And they say, yeah. He said, no go, you're a dumbass. So that's a hallway conversation, but I do want to have documentation that happened. I'll use Slack as my hallway conversation. If it's really important information, or if it's documents that I need to make sure I track, I use email. I still use good old-fashioned email a lot, because first of all, it's admissible in court, which, God forbid that ever happens, but you're going to have miscommunication probably along the way. You want to be able to have something that you can reference back to as a he said, she said. It's a cover your ass platform. And it's also great for documents, you sharing documents, things like that. Phone, I don't know why I put phone on here, but I never do phone calls in this process. Not never, but I rarely use my phone in product development. And I rarely use my phone because things can be said on the phone and you have no documentation of it. He said, she said. And I don't like that. I like to make sure that I'm able to track back. And it's not for a malicious aspect. It's for, damn, I just forgot. So when I went and looked back, oh, there it is. You know, it's just to be able to go find it. Too many things fall through the cracks with the phone. And the habit is a lot of people are like, if I have a quick question, I'll call you on the phone, you'll answer, we'll hang up. 2 weeks later, I'm like, hey, where did XYZ go? And you're like, you didn't say, I didn't know anything about that. Like, yeah, we talked about that. No, I mean, he said, she said. So project management software, there's so many platforms now, it's just sickening. We try a new one out every month. We have a few of our favorites. Your development team more than likely will have one of their favorites. You don't have to follow that rule. I have some outside groups that use platforms that I fucking hate, and I just refuse to get on there. It just confuses the shit out of me. And I'll tell them, I'll say, look, I know you're using Smartsheet, but I'm not going to ever get in there. That's yours. If you want, I have another one that we can use, or you want to communicate with me, I'm not getting on there. And if most of the project management software out there now communicates via email, so they can go post something on the platform and it emails me, and then I can respond in email, and it's tracked through their platform. But you just have to agree, and you need to know going in, what is it? What are we going to use? If they don't have one, if you're using a freelancer, then you need to find something that you can use. A great tool, a great workaround to all of this, and something I do and will demonstrate later, is we use Google Drive a lot. And you might use, what's the one, Box?
Mm-hmm. Box or Dropbox.
Dropbox, and I hate Dropbox because every time, we transfer a lot of video files, and every time I transfer video file, they want me to upgrade again and again and again and again. So I got kind of wore out with all the upgrades I was paying for. So I just used Google Drive, and I set up a file structure in Google Drive. We'll use a lot of their sheets as project management tools to kind of track progress on things, keep track of a lot of stuff. So we sort of ad hoc it a little bit to be our project management software. I also use Basecamp. It's one of my more favorite ones. It's kind of an older, I can't believe I'd say Basecamp's an older platform, but it's a really simple platform. And the guys who started and run that are geniuses. They're awesome. And then videos, we do a lot of face-to-face video calls with our virtual teams. I like to see their faces, but I also like with the industrial designers, if they're making changes and I can't be there on site, I like them to demonstrate them in front of me, and I like to see their face. Do the same thing with your prototyping, be able to see it. We do a lot of video transfer. We use, we'll do for some reason we're using Messenger, of all things, Facebook Messenger, for all the communication on a project. And the designer will load it up into Messenger. And it's because the clients really love Messenger. They took to that. They wouldn't do the software deal. They wouldn't do the project management deal. They're doing Slack more. They're seeing the value in Slack. But I just couldn't get them to adopt Basecamp or anything else. They'll never get into Google Drive. They hate Google Drive. So what we've done is that I just went ahead and gave in, and they constantly were messaging us through Messenger because they're young. And so I just said, hell with it. That's where we'll go. So we just created a Messenger channel that I can follow all that stuff in there. And we upload video updates in there, and the designers and the engineers upload videos in there. So I got to go into Messenger to find all my information on there. And I usually pull it down and put it back into the Google Drive and redocument. But it is what it is.
Is to find something that works, so you don't have a miscommunication, that everyone can agree on it.
Yep, you agree on it.
And then sometimes you're going to take that piece of communication that works for everybody and then put it into something that's workable for you.
Absolutely. And that's exactly right. It's like I said, document all communication and changes. These techniques, these are great tools to do that, but you got to know that's really what you're doing. You're documenting the whole process so that nothing falls through the cracks. You understand what's going on at all times, and especially with the changes. We talked about scope creep, which happens a lot, is scope creep. And it happens tiny. It's little tiny things that add up, and pretty soon there's a bucket full. It's just one drop after another, and those changes add up. So you need to document those changes and the request for the changes. That's another reason why, you know, I have a hard time tracking where all those changes are, because somebody made a change request to go from aluminum to stainless steel on this part, but where?
Yeah.
And is it in the email? Was that made? Was it? So it is a pain in the ass, but you've got to track all that. And then status updates. I'm not going to linger on that, but have a status update plan in early on in the beginning, all the way through to the end. We do face-to-face status updates with the different teams and the different projects. So we have a standing 10 o'clock for one project, 11 o'clock for another, every Friday. And then, you know, depending on your project, you agree on that with your team. Hey, on Fridays at 10, I'm not saying that's it, but on a certain day of the week at a certain time, it's a standing update call. And it could be 5 minutes and it might be freaking 5 hours. But you need to have one every time. It might be everybody just checking and go, I don't have a whole lot. Keep them doing it, because the moment you quit doing it, you getting them back to doing it again is, and most of the professionals will adhere to that. Set and manage deadlines, but be patient. The deadline process in inventing is a moving target. You do want to manage from deadlines, and you will be given deadlines. And like I said, you're going to fudge them, you're going to move them. Things change, but you do want to have deadlines. You do want to have marker points that you're really shooting for. It's just so healthy to have deadlines, and use your patience. Another tip: don't pay 100% upfront. Every single time I've ever done that, or anyone that I've ever met has done that, regrets it. So all the vendors involved are going to be familiar with the payment system of, here's, you know, the most common one is 50% down and 50% on delivery. It might be there's some that do, we require 10%, and then along the way there's markers, milestones. If we reach that milestone, we want another payment. We reach that milestone, we want another payment. So, but you never go in there and hand them a big old check and say, okay, you know, I'll see you in October and get my thing. That never works out. You don't pay 100% up front. And again, the horror stories that I've heard, it's crazy shit. So you pay in increments. Those increments are negotiable. Most of the people will already have that in their proposal. They'll say, this is going to be $35,000 for this work. We require 50% down here, and then here and here and here. And you can negotiate that. You can say, look, you know what? Can I do 25% down and then put another marker in here? That's shit. It can be negotiated. They may not do it, but you can try. Oh, and also the proposal can be negotiated. I mean, everything can be negotiated. I'd feel bad if we close this up without saying that. You don't have to take the first number and accept it. And that goes back to the proposal part. When you have 3 proposals and you really like this team over here, but they're $5,000 more expensive than this group here, get a hold of the team that you really, really like and say, hey, you know, I got this other proposal and they're $5,000 cheaper, but I really, really want to go with you guys. You know, their proposals are often based on just a lot of unknowables. They're hedging and fudging and coming up with those numbers because it's a new thing. They don't really know what it's going to take in the long run to get this done. I'm using my expert, guessing. So they'll come and go, sure. Or they'll say, no, but what about $2,500 difference? Negotiate all the way through this process. It's your money, and it's important for you to try to get everything you can. Don't be a dick. Don't be an asshole, Be discreet about it and do it right. Don't accept shitty work. Happens constantly, again, all the time, is you're going to get shitty work and you don't need to accept shitty work. Now, there is a line between, you know, like especially during the prototyping phase where we can't make it better than that because we need the tooling and all that. So it's going to look off. It's not necessarily shitty work. It's just the best we can do with what we have. But also the redlining process product, a month ago, half the red lines were shitty work. Half the red lines were nothing to do with the fit, the function, the materials, the things that they had to use to make it. It was, that weld is awful. This bolt isn't even, where's the pin? There's no pin here. This wasn't, where's the shield here? Your shitty work. They didn't double check their work. They didn't make sure it was good before it left the factory. And that was just shitty work. And so we paid for a prototype of X. I'm sending it back, but this is because half of it's shitty work. Do it again. Don't, you're going to have to use you have to use your brains on knowing what is what. But as you go through this process, you will learn, or call Sam. He'll tell you if it's shitty work or not. Finally, consider a coach or a mentor. I can't say enough. We have clients that we do everything for and hold their hand through the entire process. And we have people who they just call us and they run ideas by us. They go get pricing and they call us and they want to spend an hour to discuss or have us review. Having a coach or a mentor who's been through this process is so important. It's so much easier to do now. You may live in bumfuck to wherever and don't have someone around you that knows anything about this stuff. But we have the internet now, the interwebs, and you can find a coach or a mentor to help this process. If you give us a call. If we have people free or we have contacts that if they have the ability and the bandwidth, if we can't do it, there's all kinds of ways to find these people, but man, can they save your chili. They're worth their weight in gold. So. Let's do questions real quick.
Okay,
Wrap this baby up. I'm tired.
We got Dale in Detroit. I have a manufacturer that can do it all pretty turnkey. Is this a good idea?
Okay, so depends on everything I talked about in the vetting process of your professionals. Depends on their capabilities. So you have a manufacturer that can do everything turnkey. Are they a commercial or are they a consumer good manufacturer? If my product is consumer good and they're industrial, walk away. If my product is industrial and they do consumer goods, doesn't mean walk away. It means investigate more. A lot of the companies that do consumer goods also do industrial stuff and can do it pretty well. Consumer goods is a whole other level of quality. A whole other level. The people who design are on a higher level, and I don't mean to sound crass, but there are a lot of commercial. There's a commercial company that makes a lot of pieces and parts for us in Dallas, and the girls who do their engineering, they just learn the software on their own, which is cool. My best designer / engineer / manufacturing god, he's self-taught. He never went to school, but he's just amazingly gifted. These two young ladies, God bless them, they're wonderful women and they do really good, fast turnaround, but I would never have them design. They can design, washers and L brackets and set up their laser press and do the things that I need done all day long. And they're cheap as hell but I would never have them design my consumer good. Consumer goods people who are in the consumer goods market have to have a whole other level of skill and knowledge and quality than the industrial. And I'm not going to say you're not going to find an outlier. This is a rule of thumb. I feel like an ass for even saying this stuff, but never would I ever take a consumer good and have a commercial company try to do it for me, unless I'm just getting rough prototypes. Like this was done by a commercial manufacturer, but I didn't need anything more than that. I needed it fast and rough. So I had them knock it out. As I go forward, I'll be going over to prototype people who can do the really cool shit that we're looking for, and make it look way better. So if they're a consumer company and they do consumer goods, and you're developing something for commercial application, that they, depending on what it is, if it's, something really rough and raw, they may not want to do it. If it's something that, hey, this is I've invented a heating HVAC thing that goes in windows, they'll go, yeah, we can design and develop that and whatever. So that's the difference there. So know what their specialty is, and investigate it just like you would what we said earlier. Get a price from them, but then get other prices. Go find other manufacturers that can make it, and get 2 or 3 proposals.
All right, I got one from Joe in Houston. Can I just use Alibaba to find the manufacturer?
Sure. Good luck. That Alibaba is an amazing tool, just like all the other platforms, amazing tools. It's a crapshoot shit show. So you can find manufacturers on Alibaba that can do what you're looking for. A lot of those manufacturers do what's called OEM work. They do design. They'll have it in their description. These are the standard products that we make. You can order them right off the shelf all day long. If you have a custom design, we can do that for you. You can do that, and if you do it correctly and you do it cautiously, you can be successful in that. There are people who do it all the time. I have used Alibaba as well, but I do it exactly like I would any other vendors. I do a lot of vetting, communication, understanding. The scary part about using Alibaba is that, let's say you have a new kitchen appliance that you've come up with a design, or not a design, but you've come up with an invention. It's a kitchen appliance that nobody's ever seen before. It's really cool. So I get on Alibaba and I source out companies that make kitchen appliances. They look like they have all the capabilities. I engage with them. They give me pricing. I get all that stuff going through. Those guys are good at making kitchen appliances. And don't think for a second, and it's happening, as we said, it's amazing. That thing's going to be on Amazon, sold by somebody else in a week. So you're really open, going through those channels to that. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to go through here who have experience. We have a big market for Amazon resellers that's the whole cycle, is that you find a needed niche, and you find a market group that needs product, and then you get on Alibaba and they teach you how to find manufacturers that can make what you're looking for. And then they also do drop shipping, so they drop ship for you, and then you're on Amazon and you're selling, and it's this loop, and they show you how to make millions of dollars. And we've talked about how that's just so saturated now. I mean, every niche, it used to be, I have buddies who've made millions of dollars in certain niches doing that very thing. And there's programs that have come out, and tons of programs, and programs under programs, and people who watched one program and wrote their own program without ever doing it. Guru's guru. So they've saturated all these markets. And so now what we're teaching, there's a way that's called white labeling, when you just take somebody else's product that's off the shelf and you stick your name on it, and you sell it, and you might not even stick your name on it. There's a process we're teaching, is that if you're doing that, you're creating, and a lot of those guys, what they're doing is they're coming off of Amazon. They're pulling off of Amazon because they don't control the customer anymore. we're going into way too much detail on this, but it's important to know, is that that they're developing their own channels. They're going away from Amazon and they're creating their own, shopping cart, and because they can control their customer more. They have, Amazon basically owns your customer. You're just using their platform. So they're trying to drive off of Amazon onto their own platforms to create their own customer base. It's more control, it's higher profit, blah, blah, blah. And there's a way you can use Amazon to feed that channel. And so they do that. That's the next phase. And then the next phase after that is, okay, so everybody's got the same thing. I want to have custom stuff. Well, a lot of guys are just creating brands and slapping it on the same thing. And so we want to teach everyone in that space how can I take a look at the products that I'm currently delivering and make improvements and inventions in that space. I already have customers, I already have lists, I already have all this foundation. Now I'm going to develop it into a brand, and we'll talk a little bit about the next thing. But I say that because those guys have horror stories about everybody getting ripped off. They're ripping people off. Somebody comes up with an invention and kicks it out, and next you know, a manufacturer's got it for sale on his white label shelf, and I can choose that and put it on Amazon and sell it. They do. So it's just such a pool of unethical behavior that it's just scary as shit.
Well, then,
and I kind of went way down rabbit holes, but
yeah, but one thing I'd like to remind people of is, go back, if this is your kind of thought process going down this area, is how do you protect your idea? And that's what we talked about.
Exactly.
How much do you share?
Right.
How much do you divulge?
Right.
So just maybe pertinent information to kind of go from there.
Right. And there are better ways than getting on Alibaba and finding manufacturers. If you have your product designed and all that stuff's in place, there's access to there's specialists who broker manufacturing. They live here in the States. They're knowledgeable. You got to walk a really, you've really got to do a lot of vetting there too, because there's a lot of sharks in that water as well. But there's some really good ones. There's some brokers that they specialize in all kinds of different types of products, and they work with the manufacturers over there, and they're basically representatives here in all aspects.
All right, last question here. This one's from Brandon and Norman. I'm currently using a company that is producing what I perceive poor quality prototypes. How do I know when it's time to choose a new vendor?
So it depends on the changes that are made on your request. So if you get a poor prototype, like we talked about, a poor prototype, it was just shoddy quality and it was workmanship problems. It wasn't the prototype. This just wasn't completed. This wasn't done right. So we go back and we give them the red lines, but we point out all these red lines are workmanship problems that we think should not be there. Most of those they agreed and they said, yeah, we'll redo all that. There was a couple of them, they were like, we didn't think we had to take it that far. You don't need a complete seam down that entire side yet, because that requires a lot of welding involved, and we just want to tack it top and bottom just to hold it. And I said, well, I get that, but you didn't even tack it, but whatever. So if you're getting shoddy work and you're asking for them to fix it and they don't, then you leave. And that's why there's milestones, and don't ever pay 100% up front. God, I hope you haven't paid 100% up front. There's milestones. If I reach this milestone before I go to the next one, I'm basically signing off on we're good to here. We get ready for the next one, we're good to here. If I turn and walk away, I don't get a 100% money back, which a lot of them, the stories on that end as well, where a client will get all of this work done and then get angry somewhere along the way during the process, usually because of ignorance. They didn't know or understand, didn't ask the questions. What they got wasn't what they were expecting, and they throw a big fit and they want all their money back. Well, you've gotten deliverables so far up to this point. No, those are all yours. The concept art is yours. These engineering drawings are yours. This BOM list is yours. And so you get all that, but you paid that. We're keeping that money. Now, this prototype level we're on, we've already ordered, materials, haven't made it yet, so we don't have labor involved. You're going to pay us for the materials, no charge for the labor. We walk away. So you, from both angles, one as the inventor, you need to know as you're going along, you're paying for the next deliverable and you're trying to manage that process. So if it goes south, I'm into it for as little as I can be into it for. And then I want to be able to take this shit and I'll go somewhere else. I want my drawings. I want my tooling. I want whatever it is, wherever I'm at. That's mine. I paid for it. If you paid for it, it's yours. Brings up a small question which has to do with the original concept, the concept design. In that process, it's really important for you to know that in your agreement with the vendor, whether it be a freelancer or a firm, you need to have a line item in your contract. And yes, if you're using a freelancer through Upwork or wherever, make sure that these things are covered, that you own the artwork. You own the concept and the design. If it's not specifically spelled out, then the creator owns the work. So that means the designer owns the work if you don't spell it out. So you need to make sure that if I'm paying you for this, I'm getting this deliverable, it's mine. I think that's it. All right, so, wow. Let's go to the wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. This is our Smash Factory pitch. So you've gone through 5 modules of material, and so I think really good stuff.
I think it was great stuff.
I mean, we tried to be oh man, the amount of work we put into this. I started writing this a year ago. So the amount of work we've put into this alongside our real jobs of, we have was incredible. And so we really, really, really hope you got everything out of this and more that you expected. And we want feedback. We want you to tell us where we can improve. We want you to tell us if you liked it, please, leave us a great review. It's important for us that we didn't want to just put this out and have, hey, there, check that off our box. This particular series was iteration 1. We do this just like we do our inventing, our prototypes. This is prototype 1, and it's good material. We hope to continue to improve on not only the material within, but also in the delivery vehicle. We want to elevate the experience more. We're going to provide we're going to go back and redo some things that we need fixed, but we need your assistance in that. So if there was any place that was a little confusing, if there's anywhere that you thought we went way too deep or we didn't go deep enough, please let us know. We want to add in there. And also there is more. So we have started what we call the Smash Factory Academy membership program. This is a monthly membership platform that you can subscribe and take all this that you've learned so far as your launch pad and keep going. If you've gone through this and you go, all right, I'm ready to go. I want to get going. You're going to need a support group. You're going to need a way to get going on that and not be alone in a lot of ways. So that's why we created the Academy membership, is to provide a way for those who have gone through the program and are interested in learning more, seeing more, doing more, and have that group. Then that's what this is for. We actually have it. The biggest chunk of it does consist of the Inventors Clan, which is a private Facebook group. And it's our community where we share all kinds of stuff. We share ideas, projects that we're working on. We help you vet your idea. We help you, give you support there. The community, so it's much more than a one voice. it's all kinds of voices. It's the crowd. It's the community coming together to help out. So in there, we've got some interviews. We've got some fun videos on some of the projects that are under construction. It's just a kind of a fun place to go, but it's also lots and lots of information, and it's going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to add to it. We're going to bring in some interviews where we do live interviews where you can just sit in there, and we'll do a live Facebook video doing interviews with some inventors who've been very, very successful, and manufacturers, production experts, patent attorneys. All of those different things are going to be able to be found in there, which I just covered, interviews with professionals and inventors. We also are developing a podcast in line with all this, so that if you want to throw it on, the Smash Factory podcast is under development. We've got interviews completed. Hopefully by the time you see this, we'll be launched and live on the publishing platform. That should be coming along, shouldn't it?
Pretty quick, yeah.
Hello. I think I died.
Did you? You're good over here.
Again. We're also going to do coaching calls. So our coaching calls, easy. These are 1 hour calls as needed. You hit a roadblock, you want some input, you need some expert advice, you just need somebody to pump you up and tell you you're special princess. That's our coaching calls. We do a lot of mentoring, and that's part of the membership. You get a free coaching call, one free coaching call a month. And then we have access to resources. So we've already vetted and used and recommend different vendors. We have different manufacturers that we work with. And we have an amazing network, a curated pool of marketing specialists who are some of the best product marketing people, in the world. I mean, if you take people like Michael Lovich and Ron Lynch, and those are the guys that launched billion-dollar brands. And so the marketing arm, which is very, very, very important if you want to turn this into a business, we have access to those people. We're going to be leveraging, and we have inroads to them where other people don't. And also licensing experts. We have ways that we can help you navigate the licensing aspect, which is a pretty confusing aspect, but it's a really important one to go into. And we are going to develop another module just on licensing. Licensing is an amazing outlet for inventors who aren't going to have the capability to see their product all the way through, or don't have the skills to really run a business. I mean, at the end of the day, it's running a business, or they just don't want to. Licensing is, I have licenses now. It's mailbox money. It's a wonderful way to go do it. There's some people out there who really get off on licensing, and there's a lot of information about licensing out there. But it's definitely a great strategy. We like to bring products to market because we love to build brands, but licensing is definitely something worth considering. The next product, the next educational piece that we have been compiling and are getting ready to start is Smash Your Market. And this is our marketing and sales strategies. It's just as comprehensive as this baby. But it is like, what do you do now that you have your product? So, sitting at the dock with your product in your hand is not really where you want to be without having something in place. The marketing process and sales strategy starts way at the beginning. It's literally from day one. It's hand in hand all the way through if it's done correctly. Or if it's not, you can pick it up anywhere along the way. You can go ahead and start the development process and then swing out and start putting together your marketing strategies. But we teach you some very proven practices on launching a new product into niches. And it really does work hand in hand with the product development. The marketing aspect, like working on the marketing blueprints, drives a lot of decision on the product development side. We make a lot of decisions on product development because of what the marketing plan is saying. And we, hold some things up and we develop others. But if they're worked hand in hand and just like on the product side, if you know how to do that, you're going to be way successful. Smash your crowdfund. Strategies from the leaders. I have, like I said, I have a network of crowdfunding gurus who have sold millions of dollars worth of various products through the crowdfunding platform. We are pulling all of them together to create a robust crowdfunding, how to do it right. We scratched the surface in an earlier module, just enough to let you know whether or not that is an avenue you need to be thinking about. But if it is, and you say, hey, okay, I want to crowdfund this damn thing, we really want you to do it right. And we have the right people we've put together a program, and we want to really bring that to you. And then smash branding, from white label to brand line. I touched on that a little bit ago, but it's essentially navigating the process of I'm selling white label products. I've developed a platform. I've got customers. What can I do next? What's the next level? And that's really creating your own line. And it's not slapping a logo on what you've got. It's developing and inventing products in a category that provide differentiation and competitive advantage that most people don't. And it's for people who have a sales platform and they have a line of products. Man, you have a lot of shit figured out, and we can help you figure out the product development side so that I've worked with guys who have, I'm not kidding you. We talked about this do-it-yourself and survival niche. And he is one of the biggest leaders in that niche. He has blogs and video channels, hundreds of thousands of viewers, a million people on a list, has an amazing business. And he sells products that he sources on Alibaba. And he wanted to differentiate himself. We got together at a mastermind and concepted out some ideas. And he went and tried to pursue it without going back because he thought, well, I'm already getting shit made in Alibaba. And he has been getting his ass kicked. And he's been getting his ass kicked because the manufacturing and the process of it, of designing something new that he doesn't just pull off the shelf, he didn't realize how much went into that. He was expecting, here's what I want. They send him a product, he signs off on the sample, and he starts ordering them like he does his other stuff. That didn't happen. And after months and months of this turmoil and bullshit, he started throwing in the towel. Also, just like I said, a good vendor that he'd used 100 times on different products, all of a sudden these new ideas started showing up on the shelf that all of his competitors can buy, and they were his invention ideas. So there's a correct way to do that. If you have a business where you have a customer base and you're selling them products, goods, or you have, like him, for instance, he was mostly a publisher who started selling goods. If you have an audience in a niche and you think this might be a good way to go, this is going to be the right way to go. So we just wanted to share some of the things that we've been working on for you. And that's wait, there's more. Man, Sambo, let's wrap it up. But thank you for being, so helpful and supporting this, because I'm pooped. I'm tired.
Well, Robo, I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot through this process. I'm confident that, you out there listening is going to learn a ton. And I hope it's motivated action.
Right. I wanted, when we decided to do this, we needed this platform for our people anyways. We needed this for clients that we were taking on, but also mostly ones that were turning away, that weren't ready or didn't have the money or didn't have all that stuff. I needed something to give them. We'd been building and putting together different handouts and materials along the way, but I needed something to give them, and it ended up being this. And It was a lot of fun. It was great, and I hope that everybody enjoyed it. So Robo out. Till next time. See you soon, and good luck.